In the energetic synthesis community, we describe the higher concept for defining new thoughts and behaviors as based upon practicing the basic principles of the cosmic sovereign law of one. This is because these are the universal natural laws, which define and govern the highest expression of love that is the source of our divinity and inner spirit, the source made possible through the ultimate expression and embodiment of the crystal consciousness. When we practice the law of one guidelines, we automatically access unity consciousness, which connects us to crystal consciousness. Thus, we become increasingly coherent in all of our systems of energy. Spiritual ascension is the process of spiritual initiation, where we undergo tests of personal mastery in order to demonstrate our competency level, before we can move on to the next frequency, dimension, or consciousness expansion experience. On the ascension path, we are given a series of life experiences based upon our personal blueprint, designed for higher learning to support reaching our ultimate expression or heroic probability. In the course of our lifetime, our competency level is being tested in order to determine if we are ready to spiritually progress to the next frequency and consciousness level. This is purely an energetic resonance process, devoid of intellect or judgment. We must embody the higher frequencies of aligned resonances, and we can be harmed if exposed too quickly. If we hold unhealed inner violence while we are being exposed to high frequencies in our light body, whatever is hidden in the unconscious will explode to the surface, potentially creating more confusion and trauma for that person who is not prepared for what is occurring. Comprehending new ways of thinking about our life as a consciousness experience lesson on Earth during the ascension cycle helps us to assess and recognize that we must have accountability to all of our thoughts, behaviors, and life choices. If we are committed to the re-education process that is required to expand into our highest spiritual consciousness, this path will create important learning opportunities that help us to gain major improvement in our competency levels. As we become more competent and confident in dealing with any kind of life situation, positive or negative, we increase our energetic coherence, which directly impacts our level of access to higher consciousness. When we are a part of a spiritual community or group consciousness based upon the law of one, it generally raises the bar for adopting more rigorous ethical standards that help us to gain quicker access to personal spiritual learning that is helpful in the development of the self-mastery process. These rigorous ethical standards are reflected in the needed strengthening of one's moral character, finding personal accountability towards behavior or actions within that group, contemplating the nature of personal ethics, which all describe personal competency levels. We must decide if the inner resonance is there to commit to the spiritual ascension process, as it will challenge us to develop increased coherence in every interaction we have at every level of our life. This is for our highest good with spiritual evolution in mind, yet it may bring us great challenges so that we can master our fears. This is where the decision framework comes in for each person. Some people do not value a spiritual platform where unconditional love, forgiveness, compassion, and peace are the set goals for achieving coherence, while practicing higher standards of ethical behavior with others. Instead, they may believe that these are the qualities and attributes of weak and ignorant people. Each person must decide if they are willing to be aligned to their purposes of spiritual growth, by accepting the challenges they face which help them to build increasing competencies within themselves. If we refuse to recognize life challenges as lessons and opportunities for spiritual growth, we are missing the most important message. There is no right or wrong answer when it comes to making decisions in our life or within our spiritual development. It is merely reflected by the state of consciousness we have achieved in that moment. However, if we refuse to change, our spiritual growth can be easily stunted and we return back to repeating old and limiting patterns of behavior. Our personal energetic influences will give shape to our motivations influence our perceptions influence our belief systems, and these beliefs will influence our actions and choices in life. Thus, This is the time to reflect deeply on knowing our authentic motivations, both hidden and on the surface. As we more deeply reflect on our personal goals and priorities in life, we must find the goals relative to us, and hopefully seek to improve upon them, which is the natural process of consciousness evolution. Unified cooperation. To participate effectively in building coherence within any kind of system, such as in our personal light body layers or in the state of group consciousness, there must be elements of willingness and unified cooperation. We will hit the block wall of our own making, when we refuse to give up ego defense mechanisms and continue to spar with others in meaningless circular debates, in order to defend belief systems. Unified cooperation is recognizing the interdependence between all living things with a desire to engender cooperation between groups of all living systems. In coherent systems, unified cooperation is valued in order to unify the whole in energetically beneficial exchanges for creating healthy holistic systems. Cooperation becomes the natural behavior to align coherent groups synchronistically, in a naturally self-organizing system that is arranged upon a core spiritual mission or humanitarian philosophy. Unified cooperation is only successful in environments of honesty, transparency, and heart, where self-interest is sublimated to caring about the larger group interest. In commitment to heart-based transparency and non-judgment, with the ability to let go of petty differences, group trust can be formed and bonded to be supportive of larger objectives. God, sovereign, free behavior. When we are in an energetic balance with ourselves, we are in balance with our spiritual self, our heart, and we cease to have great personal turmoil or suffering. This is how we become increasingly healthy and peaceful. When we are emotionally healthy and peaceful, we are able to access our spiritual self and heart intelligence easily. So this is to comprehend our natural spiritual energetic state of being is one of emotional balance, inner peace, health, and connection with life. This state is not dependent on the external outcomes and can be experienced even when others around you and the world are undergoing great turmoil. To improve peace in a largely dysfunctional world, we may require attitudinal behavior guidelines which help us to overcome the insanity of the archontic deception strategy and their anti-life forces which abuse its mechanism. To understand the polarity of the world of forces on Earth and identify how satanic force methods are used every day to destroy the feeling heart and soul of human beings, let's review both sides of spiritually healthy behaviors: God, sovereign, free, and spiritually abusive behaviors, archontic deception. Spiritually healthy behaviors naturally connect one with God's source and Christ, and are God, sovereign, free behaviors based on the law of one. Spiritually abusive behaviors disconnect you from God and Christ, and are promoted in the archontic deception behavior. World Humanism. Humanism is a philosophical and ethical stance that emphasizes the value and capacity of human beings to be able to act independently, and to feel benevolence toward one's fellow humans through practicing humanitarian values, imparted by humane learning and in our interpretation, consciousness development. Humanism is based in the re-education of human value, which emphasize the importance of shifting anti-human ideological beliefs into humanist-based ethics and related philosophical and egalitarian principles. All human beings deserve humane treatment in order to live upon the planet with dignity, through having basic access to fundamental human needs. Our goal is to apply humanistic ethical philosophy, blended with the spiritual egalitarian principles of the law of one to expand consciousness, which inspires direct knowledge or gnosis of direct consciousness experiences. Mainstream humanism defines itself distinctly as the disconnection of the human being from its inherent spiritual energetic intelligence, or soul, in an attempt to remove the concept of humanism away from the learned bias and practices of religion. There is no way to separate humanity from its soul, and practice humanism. Once direct knowledge of the soul is known as a reality, This fact is experienced without need to control religious bias, nor conform to religious rhetoric or scientific judgments. Ascension essentially encompasses an universal perspective towards the compassionate practice of world humanism, and includes the entire spectrum of life, of all inhabitants of the world, no matter what race, religion, belief, or creed, to be equally deserving of benevolence and compassion. The value of money versus the value of life. To become transparent, to view plainly the corruption running in all controller systems, and blindly allowing it to continue to infect our lives, we must change the weighted average of valuing money, finite, overvaluing life force, infinite. In order to transform how we arrived at this current human station of materialism, spiritual disconnection, and emotional torment, it will require we take a deep dark look into the crevices of our shadow self. Many humans have allowed their shadow self to be manipulated by an anti-human sentiment, through the anti-human controller agenda, set forth by the negative alien agenda. This agenda now has the stronghold on the mass population consciousness, based upon all that we have fed it through giving our resources, time, energy, and money, towards forming anti-human societal values, consumptive modeling, and therefore handing over our human consciousness power to enslavement. The value of money, and the value of currency has taken precedent over protecting any value for promoting and supporting human life, humanitarianism, or protecting or preserving any other living thing. Investment in the finite worlds of money and materialism have taken priority in most humans' desire, rather than invest the time or effort in growing the infinite nature of their consciousness. There are serious energetic consequences to that ignorance. The reptilian contingent and its small percentage of human puppeteers have created the corporate conglomerate organizations that became the corrupted priesthood that humans now worship on the altar of materialism. As they consume our planetary resources and steal human wealth and well-being, it is making us sicker and more distorted through social and genetic engineering. They have no remorse and laugh at how stupid we are. They could care less about human beings' creative potential or respecting human rights to live on this planet with a sense of well-being and human-based values, with clear air, clean water, food, and shelter. They enjoy and feed on human terror and human pain, and therefore have set up self-enforcing mind control systems that ensure that happens on the Earth continually through enemy patterning and war programming. How do we continue to allow sociopaths and their psychosis to be the rulers and decision-makers of our human kingdom on the Earth? These people have turned our planet into a toxic wasteland for massive personal profits, and the evidence of the vanishing and obliteration of many Earth species is happening now at an alarming rate. As we in the mass human population continue to place value upon materialism and consumerism, and accepting what the criminal sociopaths feed us in deception and lies, it is their centralized power center that continues to carry out the negative alien agenda through multiple subsidiaries and syndicates. Ultimately, at the top of the food chain, it is the negative alien agenda that is behind the manipulated control of our world currencies and their markets, which incredible resources are siphoned off planet. Money, resources, and unchecked power is the controller group tool of manipulation that is given to the corrupted human power elite, used to carry out these agendas based on wars, economic terrorism, and genocide. These mafia thug syndicates are cabal groups that have been given the power from our misaligned values that shape social control structures, to ultimately decide who has resources or not, who lives and dies, who gets to eat or starve, who gets an education, and who dies of cancer or can be healed. As long as we allow these cabal groups to assign and control human value and life, as long as we buy their assembly line of consumer goods, while we allow them to profit on human suffering and the destruction of the earth, humans are not free. Surrender without submission to manipulation. The golden rule to remember with surrendering to our highest expression in spirit is, do not manipulate and tell the truth. For those resisting these radical life changes from the fear of the unknown, it can be a brutal time. In these chaotic times, it is important to stay alert and awake and walk through the dark night of the soul without impulsive behaviors causing reactions in the mind to manipulate control over others. The anti-life force primary tool to harvest and siphon energy is control plus manipulation. If you emotionally manipulate others or manipulate circumstances from your own fear and anxiety, you just allowed them a big weak spot to exploit that darkness in your life. If you are a light worker or starseed, the impact of unchecked behaviors like emotional manipulation is 1,000 times greater to impede your greater spiritual mission, and this will submit your service work to negativity. We must discipline and heal our emotions and negative ego. The acceleration from recent planetary shifts is impacting people at all levels of spiritual development, and who are experiencing a forced submission into surrendering to what is the actual state of reality in this moment. The state of what is, or the accurate assessment of current conditions, is very different than the story that most people believe and have been telling themselves as the nature of reality. The more you think you are in control of your life from the ego by manipulating what is present in the moment, the worse the accumulated onslaught of negativity that will return to you as the consequence of that behavior. In this new unity architecture, if you have begun the process of spiritual ascension, any forms of control or manipulation is amplified as a heavy external price to pay for your rapid learning for preparing for the next dimensional levels of frequency. To be peacefully initiated into the world of a changing paradigm, this time period requires energetic balance and calm neutrality be attained even when panic or anxiety ensues. For those of us who have been involved in our personal evolutionary work on the road to self-responsibility and energetic accountability, this is par for the course. We saw this coming as the global macrocosm movement that has led the way to the same patterns to manifest at the microcosm levels of our own everyday personal experiences. We must learn to command our personal space in God's sovereignty to achieve inner peace and energetic coherence. Some of these ascending groups are blessed to finally reach the energetic support and are the first waves that experience living in alignment with the natural laws, as the ascended human prototypes. The old energy foundation of 3D materialism has shifted and is no longer there at the same level for ascending humans, and they have found their personal creations from that old identity crumbling away as the entire foundation collapses. Those standing at the crossroads of human evolution, with or without an understanding of the planetary ascension changes, are being squarely directed to face the horrifying truth found in the pile of lies that had been covering up what is made of real value. In the globalscape, the horrifying truth of uncovering deception is unraveling in front of every public touchstone of media. Republican or Democrat, Trump or Hillary, they are all interchangeable images projecting the lie of the hero or enemy that the public has wanted to hear in a lullaby to stay asleep. It is all a game of deception and manipulation to gain control over planetary resources of energy. Increased transparency and accountability for disclosure to the public is the only guarantee as the systems collapse. What many human beings have invested in as a stable reality in materialism is crumbling, as it was built and formed upon a deteriorating foundation of lies. All lies create webs of deception and deceit, and many of those lies told to the masses are being unraveled through a decrepit and broken system. A system built on archontic deception strategy and manipulation in order to herd the cattle of the sleeping masses straight into the slaughterhouse. To stop being herded by the psychological and emotional manipulation of mind control, we must be awakened, even if what we see is painful. Illusions and deceptions are shattering everywhere. In 2017, we will truly need to consider our life choices of where we place our time, effort, and attention. Ask yourself, who do you serve and what is your authority? Where do you spend most of your time, energy, consciousness, and love? Has the pursuit of money and materialism taken over your life? Finding your bliss and covering your eyes to the plight of the world is not the answer. Live your purpose, seek the truth of what is going on around you, no matter how painful and ugly it may appear, and follow your spirit without hesitation. How many times I have heard over the years from conditional-based lightworkers, "I don't do aliens." We cannot afford to live in denial anymore. The planet and humanity need more awake, aware, and empathic people. Lisa. Our competency level is being tested in order to determine if we are ready to spiritually progress to the next frequency and consciousness level. This is purely an energetic resonance process, devoid of intellect or judgment. We must embody the higher frequencies of aligned resonances, and we can be harmed if exposed too quickly. If we hold unhealed inner violence while we are being exposed to high frequencies in our tests of personal mastery in order to demonstrate our competency level, before we can move on to the next frequency, dimension, or consciousness expansion experience. On the ascension path, we are given a series of life experiences based upon our personal blueprint, designed for higher learning to support reaching our ultimate expression or heroic probability. In the course of our lifetime, in the energetic synthesis community, we describe the higher concept for defining new thoughts and behaviors as based upon practicing the basic principles of the cosmic sovereign law of one. This is because these are the universal natural laws, which define and govern the highest expression of love, that is the soul light body. Whatever is hidden in the unconscious will explode to the surface, potentially creating more confusion and trauma for that person who is not prepared for what is occurring. Comprehending new ways of thinking about our life as a consciousness experience lesson on Earth during the ascension cycle helps us to assess and recognize that we must have accountability to all of our thoughts, behaviors, and life choice. Source of our divinity and inner spirit, the source made possible through the ultimate expression and embodiment of the crystal consciousness. When we practice the law of one guidelines, we automatically access unity consciousness, which connects us to crystal consciousness. Thus, we become increasingly coherent in all of our systems of energy. Spiritual ascension is the process of spiritual initiation, where we undergo